Very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to this PECB webinar on safeguarding your organization, information security, cybersecurity, and privacy best practices. My name is Ashok Sarangapani. About us, who we are, I'll take a few minutes. We are a company established in Malaysia. We provide management training and corporate training programs on anti-corruption, on industry across this region. We have won several awards from UN Global Compact Network, and we have a service portfolio of more than 50. We do consulting and training programs in governance, ethics, compliance, ISO management system implementation, finance transformation services, statistical consulting, and talent acquisition services. We provide corporate training programs. PECB training programs is our forte. And we also do certain programs in project management, statistical models, information security, etc. About myself, I'm the founder and CEO. I have about 26 years of experience across several countries, Asia, Pacific, Africa, and Middle East. I have some expertise, not that much, but a good one in IT, governance, and risk management. And I have been recognized as one of the industry participants. I have been given the honor of representing Malaysia at the UN Global Sector, Private Sector Forum in year 22. Let's get to this important topic today, where we will be touch basing about information security, cyber security, data privacy. What are those general views that you would like to know? And some examples of security failures and what kind of repercussions it had. We'll get some very recent data, which is all about 2023. And then we will try to get through some of the best practices that you would need to adopt when it comes to information, cybersecurity, data privacy. And we will try to end the session with ISMS, Information Security Management System, ISO 27001. And also we will touch base on ISO 27002. It talks about controls that would be needed for an organization when they are embarking ISMS, and also some of the ISO standard trainings that PECB offers. The session is going to be for 45 minutes. I appreciate your time, and we will have 15 minutes of Q&A, and we hope to give you a decent inputs about the importance of cybersecurity, information security as we move along. A quick overview. What do we mean by information security and cyber security for a common man or for anyone that would like to know, right? They are often used interchangeably, but they have something very, very different, right? What is information security and cyber security? Cyber security is part of information security. And nowadays, we are having so many cases of cyber security breaches, which is costing organization quite a huge issues in terms of the business breakdowns, in terms of security incidents, in terms of failures, in terms of monetary value. So what is information security? It is very much broader in scope. It encompasses the protection of all types of information, including physical documents, electronic data, and intellectual properties. It focuses on confidentiality, integrity, transparency, and availability. The data needs to be there when in use. The information that need to be there have to be kept secure, accurate, and accessible only to the authorized users. When it is not happening, the data breach happens. And when such data breach happens, it is going to get very, very costly. It also includes physical security measures, right? When you are entering into an organization, 3 types of security controls are very important. One is physical security, organizational security, and security towards technology. All of these have to be considered when it comes to information security, right? Data centers, your servers, your network infrastructure, all have to be robustly kept in terms of security. So what is cyber security? It is specific to the digital environments that we are in. It deals exclusively with protecting your computer systems across your organization, across branches, across multiple countries, and it is all interconnected. So when a network of data is infringed, your computer systems is going to be affected. So it is very important from that point of view that your data is kept secured away from cyber threats. It focuses on preventing, detecting, and responding to cyber attacks. Cyber attacks nowadays comes in many different forces. It is mostly unknowns, and it comes when you are not at your best in terms of security in controls. It addresses threats like hacking, malware, phishing, and ransomware. Technical measures includes you employ tools like firewalls, detection systems, intrusion detection systems, and then encryption methods to defend against the cyber threats. These cyber threats, the fraudsters, those who are in this field are normally 3 times more efficient than those who are running the organizations. So those who are creating those cyber security breaches are normally experts sitting in anywhere in the world. So you have to understand that they are very smart, and it means your cyber security controls have to be a lot more stronger than what it should be. Nowadays, we have a lot of threats coming through, and what are those some threats that needs to be considered, right? The accelerated adoption of digital technologies nowadays. If you look all over, the increased use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, or all these cases where the cyber security ransomware attacks are all most common. It is most vulnerable when you don't have a resilient cyber security systems. They are deploying increased advanced methods, right? As I said earlier, they are very uh, knowledgeable about how this cyber security environment generally works, and they have the advanced tools, and they are always innovative. And the FBI have also acknowledged in this, where they are having a lot more advanced control tools, and this is becoming a problem issue when it comes to facing these cyber criminals across the world. So they have this much sophisticated way of approaching these attacks, are targeting all sizes organizations across the world, and those who have least security measures, they are the one who are attacked. And it also has some kind of strategy as to what they would want, and in that way they attack the organization where they can get the most from the shortest period of time that they are in. And the shift to remote work, the post-COVID, many of the organizations have changed the way they are working, and it means quite a number of people have gone on remote, and now things have changed. But this pandemic has created a lot more opportunities for cybersecurity criminals to come in and do damages. Data breaches, we are going to study some statistics of data breaches. This is of 2023, and these data breaches on an average is costing 5.5 million US dollars. That's according to the study from IBM, and we are going to get through few more very significant statistics, and that would mean quite a lot for the CTOs and the CIOs sitting in an organization to prevent these things from happening, to ensure that the mitigation things are in place, and financial and reputational damage are mitigated to the maximum extent. The constantly changing regulatory environment, the dynamics of today's digitalized world means quite a lot of innovations are happening. At the same time, the regulatory changes are also happening at a decent pace. It means today's economic environment, digitalized environment is not the same. And when you look at 3 months down the line, the changes are quite rapid with the advent of so many laws, and so many countries are actually trying to be very much digitalized, and they are putting in quite a number of data protection laws. One example is the one where we live, Malaysia. They have just upgraded their Data Protection Act with the 2024 regulatory requirement that has come in force in June 2024. I would like to highlight a couple of that in the slide that we are going through. So what it means that the level of threats, the level of requirements have leapfrogged, and it means the compliance have to take a hot seat. And when you want to consider cost of implementing any of the programs, the important consideration is, when you think of non-compliance, all these budgetary requirements needs to take a second seat. Many of the organizations, as you may think, they are slightly delayed in terms of implementing certain controls. They always think, can we do it later, this quarter, no, next quarter. Things of that sort has also caused a problem or two for the companies, because they have delayed the implementation of certain of the controls, which also means an issue or two for some organizations. Some examples of security failures which have got a lot of attention in the recent past: one that happened in the Malaysian Ministry of Health, the Apple iCloud breach, the SolarWind Orion platform exploits. All of this, where the cyber criminals rather, have used the vulnerability in the systems wherein they penetrated the data, and they have, taken over those data, and then through this ransomware attacks, or making the organizations to face the drills of, loss of data. When the data is lost, it is very, very difficult to get it. And what does one of the statistics that we have seen is, as soon as the data breach has occurred, it is also important to have a resilient organizational IT environment, where you have to always, most of the times, report this to the authorities. When the FBI is getting involved, for example, the statistics have so far said that your recovery rate of the data which was lost is normally increased more than 33% of the time when you are involving the authorities in the country. So likewise, if you are there, please feel free to go and approach the authorities. Do not hesitate to report this at the first case. So an example of Ministry of Health attack, it caused significant disruptions to healthcare services, delay in the patient care and access to the health records. Because we are so much in the digitalized world, any issues on any of the security failures is going to cause wider repercussions, not only in the organization, because the whole world is interconnected. It means you will be either directly or indirectly affected by the data breach. And these data breaches normally happens to those who are mostly serving the bigger, wider community, and they target those larger companies, larger public listed companies, larger government organization, where they provide infrastructure or utility services or human related services to the wider community. When that happens, there is a complete breakdown of services, and it creates a very difficult environment for people. That's the thing that we have to understand. And if you look at every day in the news, you get to hear data breaches, cybersecurity attacks, ransomware attacks, the dark world impacts, and criminals across. And all of these, when it happens, what normally happens when you have a cybersecurity breaches, it is going to cost a company millions of dollars. And what invariably happens when you are in an attack environment, you're going to incur cost. And what does that mean? The cost of services that you are getting is also getting increased, because the companies have to recover, the industry, the economy, when it spends something on data breaches, the cost have to be recovered from somewhere else. So it means that your cost of services is going to get increased, and you won't see that impact directly. So it is very important from that point of view that your organization have a healthy security control environment. Some examples, courtesy Statistica. As you see, the most prevalent forms of cyber crime, and the cyber crime cost of this annual cost of cyber crime has increased to is expected to increase to $13.82 billion. As you see, this is a graph where we would like to see that as a stock market price, where we will be happy to see that increasing. But this one is a cyber crime cost. It means the cost for the business is going to increase. It means the organization have to really make quite a number of IT related controls to be put in place. So on the statistics on the left, as you see, the non-payment, non-delivery, personal data breach, phishing, scams, identity thefts are all going to be the important ones, and 53.2% is going to be on the phishing scams. This is going to face, the world is going to face, and this is something that we have to understand. It's going to be there, and you have to have necessary controls. What are those necessary controls? We will get to see after a few slides of impactful data that one we need to see. The reported cyber crimes losses is going to topple more than 10 billion again in this year. It is 12.5 billion dollars. Is it nice to have, or is it necessary? Under the statistics they have asked, and if you look at the countries like China and India, right, they are all concerned. 1/3 of the people living in two of the biggest countries are reporting a lot of concerns in terms of data use, which means we, as a responsible organization, have to provide services where most of the people who are accessing the data have to be fine and have to be comfortable with. And 42%, if you see the numbers in blue, many of them have already started doing something from their personal capacity as organizations, increasing data protection online, and they are very actively involved. Emails is becoming a biggest threat. That's a statistic that is something very important to read through. Average rate of failures in 2023 is through attachments, where organizations, staff working across are increasingly tempted to touch on those attachments that comes in from nowhere. And when they do that, the IT systems are corrupted, the personal laptops, the organizational laptops are all getting corrupted, and then it means the data getting breached. So that 17% of the time, the email attachments are all going to have a greater impact. And which country is most worried about data use online? There are many countries, every country for that matter, and this statistics was published in 2023, and that says Spain, Mexico, and France, and India, some of the countries where you have people who are most worried about the data online. So what does it mean for other countries? It is just that the statistics are not published, but every country, wherever you are living, I am sure everyone is very, very concerned about the data that is going across in the digital world, and what could happen when the data gets into a wrong hand. Some of the statistics, when the data breach is happening, where was those data stored? Most of the data are stored across multiple types of environments: public cloud environment, on-premises, and private cloud. So each one of those data storage mechanisms have seen data breaches. So in other way, if you put it, or which is the safest mode of data that can be stored in an environment, there are no such thing, because in every instances the data is getting breached. So the question for the IT people is, which one is best? It depends upon the type of organization that you are in and what kind of data that you would like to store. A few more important statistics, as you would see, time to identify and contain a data breach by a storage location, it is 213 days in some cases. On-premise, it takes about 170 cases. That is mean time to investigate, mean time to closure, right? These are the days that an organization takes. So what is it? It says there are no such thing as, if you have a data breach, the controls are put in place and everything is getting back to normal in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. There are no such cases. It takes quite a number of days for the data to be back. And another statistic also shows that 90% of the organizations are never going to recover from the data breach. This is a very alarming figure, and this is what has come out in the survey. Survey can be misleading sometimes, but what is that we need to understand is these are all alarming statistics. And when it comes to the data time and data to contain, again, is all running into a large number of days. Yeah. So I was mentioning it earlier, these are the instances, these are the data statistics that you have to get in really low. Average total cost of a breach is US $4.8 million. Equating it to the country that you live in, it is still going to be a large figure. Average cost of a malicious insider attack is again $4.99 US in millions. Growth of cybersecurity skills shortage. The world is now requiring quite a number of skilled persons having knowledge in cybersecurity, cyber training, cyber and security, building environment, infrastructure, etc. And this is an ever-growing field, and the rate of requirement is growing at a pace of 26%. And whether do you want to use AI or not, or this is another big questions that is coming in, and the boardroom discussions nowadays is how much of AI can help in preventing any kind of data breaches, right? And this is another example which is from the IBM cost of data breach report. It says an organization which is investing in AI, they are going to have a good savings of $2.2 million over a period of time. Yeah, I said earlier, when you invest, when you involve the law enforcement, you're going to literally, get another savings. They're going to help you to prevent, cost drainage, and they're going to get some savings. Some other important data, as you would see, breaches 46% of the time, the customer personal data is breached. And when it comes to the largest average cost increase among all industries, are all running into huge numbers. Data breaches takes about 300 plus days, etc. Security failures, how much AI and automation did you use in 4 security categories? AI is getting very much in use, and these AIs help in prevention, detection, investigation, and response, right? And if you look at the two statistics, extensive use and limited use, there is still, it is being used. So most of the time, 70% of the data statistics here says, they are having some sort of a use, and some or slowly the extensive usage is slowly creeping up, and at the same time, in a couple of years, this is going to be at a much larger pace. And when you look at AI and when you use those AI, what is that it translates into? The cost of data breach is normally getting reduced when it comes to the extensive usage. A few more statistics which will be of a good one to know when it comes to the data breach of 3 types of most common types of exhaustion attacks. It is destructive attacks, data exfiltration, ransomware attacks. All of these are costing companies in millions of dollars. So let's come to the security best practices, information security best practices. What we need to do, we have to have a very strong governance framework. It is very important to have a very resilient sets of company policies and procedures, and that will need to cover your organizational assets. What are those detailed policies? For example, it is about information security policy. It is about the data usage policy. It is about your information systems usage policy, cyber usage policy. So things of that sort have to be there, and the governing documents needs to be put in place. What needs to be covered as information assets? What are your principal assets? What are your secondary assets? What needs to be considered as critical assets? All of this will needs to be covered under your policy framework. So in this case, the policy framework will have to be developed by the IT team, and it needs to have the buy-in. from the top management. Implementing a systemic approach to managing and protecting sensitive information. So when you have the information, you have to classify this as sensitive information, the normal information, and layering of information have to be done, and you have to ensure there is a proper approach for labeling what is a general information, what are those which are considered as sensitive information. Training is very important again, so you have to create that training metrics. You have to ensure every employee in your organization are given certain trainings, more from the awareness levels, which have to be given across all of them, and those who are actually in the business of managing your information security, they have to be given some specialized trainings, and these needs to be done regularly. What is regular, what is periodic, what is adequate, it is left to the management to decide, but the importance of training cannot be underestimated in such cases. Scheduling an audit in the internal audit departments in any organization play a very significant role. They are one of the defense departments in an organization, and they carry an important responsibility when it comes to managing the control environments, when it comes to evaluating rather the security control environment. So you have this information systems security audits, and you have people with that information system security audit as certifications. They are going to come and do an audit. These audits again have to be risk based. The whole of this information security control have to be risk based. It means higher the risk, the greater the probability of missteps, impact. The risk assessment have to be done, and based on that, the internal and external audits have to be done. What kind of external audits are we looking at? If an organization wanting to adopt ISO standards, they can do that ISO standards implementation and have the external certification bodies to come and do. When you have an external certifications for your organization, it adds quite a lot of value. And when it comes to applying measures to protect physical access to the information systems and facilities, it is again an important requirement under the information security to make sure that access to the employees are always, active, always alive, and they are controlled at multiple checkpoints. So you have seen quite a number of places where the access to the security and physical access are all not fully controlled. As a result of it, the data breaches are happening in broad daylight. So one of the physical access control is putting in your CCTV cameras. Classification of information is also quite an important one. Continuing on, the information security best examples, you have to make sure you have proper procedures and your incidents are all tracked properly, and you have a robust systemic incident management systems and processes in place. And at the moment the security incident was detected, it is getting recorded in the database, and your security protocols are activated, and then all those that is required to be done to manage the security have to be done. And in terms of detection to recovery based on the nature of data that has been potentially estimated to be lost, based on that you have to ensure that the team of people are there and they are helping to manage and mitigate and prevent these security incidents that can happen in future. So in terms of life cycle, you have to ensure the security measures are all put in place. It means you are going to make sure the system development life cycle process is all managed. One of those examples could be how do you manage your vendors, the security control providers. When it comes to that, you need to have robust contracts in place, and that will help you to mitigate any of the liabilities that may be caused by the third parties. Scanning and managing vulnerabilities in the systems and applications. You have to deploy the best practices when it comes to mitigating, when it comes to detecting, when it comes to the threat analysis, all of those needs to be in place. Create and test plans to ensure operational continuity during and after the disruption. This is the disaster recovery. The business BCP and BCP processes needs to be put in place. So if a security incident is happening in your main office and your BCP be in place, is it active? So you have to also test the resilience of your BCP systems and BCP processes in place. That needs to be done. We covered this information security. Now we have to look at from the point of cyber security. Cyber security again is quite an important one. Strong passwords, multi-layer, multi-factor authentication process, software and systems be up to date. And when it is not, we have seen recently, a case of software upgrade has caused a global destruction and disruption. So that shouldn't be happening, and you have to have your IT team ensuring all your softwares are kept up to date. Cautious of phishing attempts and avoid clicking these links. This is again a training part and awareness part where your information security department or the team have to give some practical examples of what would happen when these things are done, and you have to test the resilience and the knowledge of the staff when it comes to these kind of attempts and how the staff actually create. Antivirus and anti-malware software have to be up to date. Protect your devices with firewalls and safety security. And you have to have the budget to do that. When you are having shortfall in the budget, certain companies decide to implement these at a later date or may delay the implementation of softwares. These are the things that should be best avoided. Data privacy best practices. You have to make sure you are implementing robust security measures, employing encryption and access controls, firewalls, regular backups. Security risk assessment is an important function that needs to be in place. You have to ensure those regular risk assessments are done, and it is all done at a regular period, and it needs to be done at every frequent intervals of time. It has to be at a period of 3 months to 6 months. Potential threats, potential vulnerabilities have to be identified and have to be managed at regular intervals of time. Compliance with the data privacy regulations. You have quite a number of data privacy regulatory requirements in the country that you operate. And if you are operating in multiple countries, you have to make sure those data protection regulatory requirement of all the countries that you have operations on are all covered. So it means the knowledge and the awareness of the people in your organization have to be aware of the GDPR, have to be aware of the local data protection act, etc. in that case. Educate employees. Again, the training needs to be there. It has to be done at regular intervals of time. Access controls are all have to be done. So for example, if an employee is on leave, if they are on long leave, the requirements of they having controls, they having access to the systems have to be revisited, and they have to have some kind of a temporary stoppage of their data to prevent any kind of misuse. So access is always on need basis, and when they need to get access on, and these access controls have to be managed by multiple people, and it has to be always have to be approved by 2 persons. So a request comes from the user, the supervisor approves, and then the IT team gives the approval. Always a dual control mechanism is quite important when it comes to this. A few more controls. I'm not going to have everything in the interest of time. You have to make sure the data breach response plan is very robust. Who needs to be escalated at what point in time? How are those systems built in to detect, to mitigate, to prevent it from happening? Can you do it as a containment? All of these data breach response plan have to be robust, and it needs to be validated, and it needs to be tested before it is put into practice. I'm going to talk a bit about the data protection bill that has come into place in Malaysia. It is a very significant change that have come, and recently there have been some significant requirements coming in. One is the appointment of data protection officer. The law requires every organization to have this data protection officer. What does that mean is, with the talent not available, getting a right person as a data protection officer is going to be a very difficult thing to manage. And there are obligations in terms of data processes, which are all of legal significance. It also requires the company to also respond by giving this mandatory breach notification to the authorities. And in terms of right to data portability and inclusion of biometric data as sensitive personal data is all some salient changes that have come in. And it also have increased the penalties for non-compliance up to a local currency of 1 million ringgits is the penalty that they have put in place. So what does it means is the organization have to take this data protection quite an important aspect of compliance in an organization, which is very important in this case. They have also invented a new app, which is called My ISGRC app. It is a tool that is available for agencies to measure the responses, availability, and initiatives of governance and risk management in information security issues and problems in the country. And these applications have quite a number of features. It has a questionnaire, it has a verification data, it is having also the results and suggested information security recommended improvements. And this data can be accessed by the agencies. Who are those agencies? It's government agencies in particular, but it is also available to the health and other utility sectors. It accesses the current data security, it accesses the data, and it also helps to get certain business decisions. And overall, this app will help to improve your information security environment, addresses the threats, and then what all challenges that are faced by the agencies. This app is a medium through which the communication happens. And end of the day, the preparedness of the agencies when it comes to the information security is all managed through this security app. Okay, moving on to a few more important suggested practices when it comes to one is the information security risk assessment, where you will have to have a team to detect those vulnerabilities, assess the threats, and prioritize the mitigation. Multiple number of tools are available in the market for the companies, and these can be managed based on the requirements, based on the preferences by companies. Any ISO standards or any ISO ISMS standards in particular, you have to have this risk management framework. It is very important to do this risk management for information security. It requires an organization to look at what they have as part of the organization, identify some of the important requirements, identify who are all the external and internal parties, identify what kind of risks that they are exposed to, and identify the risk, and go through this risk analysis process, which includes identification of the risk, doing an analysis, and prioritizing which needs to be tackled first, which is what the evaluation, and finally having an information security risk treatment for those which are seen as most important. So this risk assessment process have to be done, and when it needs to be done, it can be done during the implementation, it can be done every year, or it can be done once in 2 years. A risk assessment from the information security point of view will need to sit in the enterprise risk assessment framework. That is, you have enterprise risk assessment, within that you have IT, within that you can have compliance risk assessment, within that you have some governance risk assessment framework. The typical risk assessment requires at least a few people to manage it, and it is normally conducted across the business, but with the information technologies point of view. A register also have to be built in. This also means you have to ensure a proper recording of all those risks that you have in a form of a template, and then this is circulated in the group within your organization, and it is having the proper roles and responsibilities where everyone is going to know what kind of risks they have, and those who are assigned as risk owners, they are going to take measures in mitigating the identified risk and with the budget and the timeline into place. We have few other processes. Those are just for your information. We have tried to put it in. We have Octave, Mehari methodologies. You have EBIOS methodologies, and these methodologies in all coming out to the process of risk management, and it needs to be best managed according to the requirements of the organization, as I mentioned. Octave is operational critical threat asset and vulnerability evaluation. It is again a self-directed risk assessment methodology. Mehari is methods of harmonized analysis of risk. It is again used mostly in certain parts of Europe, US, and Canada. Again, it is a risk management approach based on ISO 27001. We have 4 tools. More of those data, we can always have an opportunity to go through this PECB trainings, and we will be able to get to understand quite a number of process methodologies of these 2 risk assessment programs. We have NIST framework. You have CRAM and TRA methods. Other such methods are also going to be quite helpful. And any information security framework will also have to constantly look out for continuous improvements. So this is something that you have to make sure you have an input, an action, and a trigger and output. Small but certain steps that needs to be put in place. Every risk identified will have to go through this process of validations, and wherever possible, any improvements in the form of new features, any improvements in the form of new upgrades, any improvements in the form of new training programs, all of those needs to be appropriately considered and have to be put in place. So basically what is this asking an organization to do is to continuously look at the dynamics of your information security that you are in, and making sure that the controls that you are putting in place are constantly working, and if there is a need for any kind of improvements, you put in those improvements. An information security management system is a fantastic tool, fantastic standard that one can adopt, and what it basically tells is it will help you to establish, implement, operate, monitor, review, maintain, and improve organizational information security. This is one of the ISO standards which is getting more and more common, and it is one way where an organization can demonstrate that they have a good, resilient cybersecurity, information security, data privacy measures in place, because this ISO standard tackles all of those. And if you want to do it, you have to also consider information security controls, which is ISO 27002. You have about 93 controls in this ISO standards. As you see on the screen, you have organizational control, technology control, physical controls, and people controls. This is the latest update issued by ISO organization in February 2022. What does it mean? It means organizational level, you have quite a number of controls. It is talking about people, which is talking about the process, which is talking about the management of information, which is talking about the compliance with laws and regulations, which is around 37 in numbers. When it comes to the technology, it is making sure that you are having appropriate technologies in place and you are doing all those controls. Physical controls and people controls. What are those? We can see quickly. In the interest of time, I have 1 more minute to just finish it off and leave the questions for you to respond back. We have organizational controls, the list of those as you see it on the screen, quite a number of them. In essence, I wish everyone follow this. This is the best one. You have options to have this ISO standards and then adopt it, and you also have another way of looking at it, adopting it as well as getting it certified. The ISO controls that you state are very detailed. It requires you to ensure you have necessary systems, necessary processes, necessary resources, and necessary performance indicators, performance tools to be in place, and you have all of those controls properly evaluated. Whether it is applicable or not is another thing that you have to really consider. The question is, are all 93 controls applicable? Not necessarily, but what is applicable, what is not applicable is need to be considered. And this standard is a very good one, and that can be definitely used by the IT departments. Technology controls, we have 34 in number. So it talks about access to the source code, to privilege access rights, to change management, to security coding, to monitoring activities, to data leak preventions. So if you consider all of those 93 controls, most likely an organization would have considered majority of the controls that needs to be looked in. Because the ISO standard has been recently revisited, and they have condensed it in a way that it is easy for the organization to look and adopt. People control. So when it comes to people, or you're making sure that you have the right sets of people working in your organization, it requires you to ensure the people that you are onboarding, the people that you have, and people that you are relieving are all kind of controlled through this sets of people controls. And when it comes to physical controls, the way that you come into your office, to where you store your data, to where your the hardware are stored and the software are stored, all of this are pointing out to physical controls. Some of the other security measures again is on relating to the earlier controls that I have mentioned. And you have a tool wherein you can also check, is your password compromised? Is just for, this is a place, have I been pawned? I just found out that I checked my password. My password was not, pawned, but there are certain passwords that people use are always susceptible to fail. So this is one such tool that you can look in and check how resilient you are. And PECB courses are quite a number of them, and you have the list in front of you, and you can always get in touch with us when it comes to improving, upskilling, or reskilling in many of these areas. Q&A, the time for question and answers. I leave this next 15 minutes for question and answers. Thank you for your time. I have some questions. Which cybersecurity measures have you found most effective in preventing cyber threats, and how do you ensure that they stay up to date? Cybersecurity measures, to me, the best one will be to have controls over the data that you have, having good controls on your systems, and cybersecurity is making sure that you have access controls in place, and you make sure that your data is in the secured environment. The Office 365 environment is one of the best that we can see. And how do you ensure that they are up to date? Again, these cyber threats comes in various places, various times, and your IT system needs to be resilient, and they have to be the main people when it comes to managing the security environment. How does your organization balance the need for robust security with flexibility and accessibility required by employees and clients? Yes, this is a balancing act that requires the review and approval from the very top. So the recommendations have to come from your chief of IT in this case, and the balance have to be considered where you are giving a freedom for your staff to operate from work from home, but at the same time, when they are working at home, they have to be given proper training, right? And then they have to understand what are those do's and don'ts. And when it comes to accessing the company system from the network that they have, They have to make sure that they are accessing it in a very controlled environment. The use of company tools have to be kept in that way. What steps do you take to comply with regional and global privacy regulations such as GDPRs and local laws in Asia? I mean, it is a requirement, and what we need to do is to make sure the organization has the necessary controls in place. It means if it is a requirement in Asia for that, we have to make sure we have this necessary privacy requirements considered. You have to have the organizational policies up to date. You have to ensure that people are aware of it, and you have to have those systems that you are having your design is also robust. Basically, for me, what I would be taking is my existing organizational policies and procedures is able to cover the regional and global privacy regulations. If it is not the case, then your first step in this case would be to revisit your policies and make sure that your data protection, whatever that you have, is also covering the global requirements. Yep, around a month ago, there was a crash in Microsoft and other software impacting flights and other things. So although strong cybersecurity is there, there is some kind of leakage in security. Yeah, this is definitely a leakage in the security, and still it is being debated as to what had caused this. And this is an eye opener for every organization. And when it comes to such kind of global software system being used across, we have to be even more resilient, and you have to ensure necessary practices are all revisited, and where there could possibly be a leakage is all prevented and mitigated. Can you eliminate the threats of cybersecurity and information security breaches? You cannot eliminate that. Let's be clear on that. What we can do is at best prevent, mitigate, minimize, and that can be done only when you have some kind of standardized global controls that you are put in place. Otherwise, it will be very, very difficult. So when it happens, you just make sure it is minimized to a certain extent. Your breaches are contained to a department level, or to a country level, or to a product level, and these containments are very, very. Other way to look at is how what can be done immediately, how we can improve the security environment under which we are operating. The best way is to look at from the point of where do you stand at the moment. Always it's a good one to have a kind of a study done by your information security control team to do a kind of a gap analysis. Look at what the current security standards that are being in globally, and where does your organization stand. So you can do a honest gap analysis and then come out with a report that says you are close to 50% when it comes to your security controls. This is the best practices that globally are prevalent in the industry that we are operating, and this is where we don't have it. And how do you do that kind of a gap analysis is to ensure that you are looking at some of the ISO standards, some of the other industry standards. In those standards, it will tell you how to map your requirements in terms of having the best in class security control environment. You have to start from somewhere, and what is that you can do is to look at for standards, and those standards are all available across, and one of them is ISO standards, and quite a number of such ISO standards help organizations. And the fact that ISO standards have demonstrated more resilient operating model for companies has been very clearly proven. The proven things is all clearly established, and companies are very vocal in those adopting ISO, ISMS, adopting other standards, or helping organizations to ensure the control environment are definitely kept within at a manageable levels. Which is more effective, ISO 27001 or NIST? There are no right or wrong answers in this case. To me, both of them are going to serve a purpose. In my view, ISO 27001 is much broader in nature, where you're going to look at quite a number of areas. And it is a management system, by the way, and NIST is one of the security control process, right? So both will be effective, but to me, ISO 27001 is going to be better. What would be the best to learn or master first? Octave, Octave S, Allergico, Forte. Each one are quite different. To me, Octave S would be a one that I could recommend. Do you have a security policy formulate for non-profit organization? Yeah, you can. We do have those policies. Non-profit organization have to have, because the non-profit organization is one of the conduit for all those security breaches, right? Because their controls are not weak, and the so-called transformation and transmission of data happens through non-profit organization. So it needs to be there, and they have to have this security policies, and it is applicable to them as well. All right. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you got a bit of an understanding or some better understanding of it. For any further questions, you can always reach out to us to PECB, and we are here to help for all of your issues or whatever that you require to have. Thank you very much for your time.